you've ever painted in an art class, you've almost certainly had to make a color wheel at some point. While I worked on this inevitable project in my 2D design class this semester, I struggled the most with purple. I won't bore you with the details, so let's just say that after 2 days, I developed stronger negative feelings about the color purple than I thought I was capable of feeling about anything. However, after numerous failed attempts, I finally got an acceptable hue. I learned firsthand what I've heard from so many teachers and coaches over the years. You learn more from failures than you do from success. Not only is this true for the color purple, but also for the World War II crypto system of the same name, though perhaps not in the way you might expect. Purple is a powerful crypto system with a high degree of confusion, but it ultimately was not used to its fullest potential due to mistakes made in its implementation. These mistakes led to the crypto system being broken, which in turn led to significant advancements in crypto. In order to fully appreciate this crypto system, it's best to begin with some historical context. Before and through World War II, most Japanese naval codes were based on codebooks, which would have a key with symbols for common words and phrases, as well as a simple substitution cipher for the alphabet. There were also super enciphering techniques used, which involved encrypting the ciphertext produced by the codebooks. These books were changed frequently, but it was still no challenge for Americans to use frequency analysis to crack these codes. In 1935, the Japanese began to shift away from this insecure method to machine-based crypto systems. They purchased an older version of the German Enigma, and with that information, developed their first machine-based crypto system. When the U.S. Army first came across transmissions encoded with this machine, they nicknamed it Red. 2 years later, Americans broke the crypto system and soon after accidentally gave away that they knew how to decipher these messages. By 1938, the Japanese had developed a second machine-based crypto system, the alphabetical typewriter 97, which Americans called Purple. From then on, Purple was used for the messages which required higher security, although Red was still used for some time after. Moving on from the historical context, the next step for understanding Purple is the machine used for encryption and decryption. The Japanese were able to prevent the Purple machines from ever falling into enemy hands, so all the information we have is derived from intercepted ciphertext. The machine makes use of two encryption methods we learned about early in the year: simple substitution and permutation. The Purple machine had two typewriters for input and output. The message was typed on the first keyboard, and the second would type the ciphertext automatically as it was encoded. After the keyboards are the input and output switchboards on their respective ends. Each switchboard consists of two sets of 26 letters, the internal and external alphabets. The external alphabet was split into 20 consonants and the vowels A, E, I, O, U, and Y. These external alphabet letters would be connected through wires to 26 letters of the internal alphabet. In Red, the consonants were matched with consonants and the vowels with vowels, but with Purple, the consonants could be connected to vowels, and vice versa. The letters of the external alphabet are connected to the same letters of the internal alphabet in both input and output switchboards. After the switchboards are the switches in 25 positions numbered 1 through 25. The consonants, that is, they were consonants in the plain text and the external alphabet, go through 3 permutations based on the positions of the 320 switches, which change positions using a rotor at 3 different speeds. For example, say the 20 switches are called A, B, and C, with A fast, B medium, and C slow. A might rotate once per letter typed, B once per 7 letters typed, and C once per 11 letters typed. Any of the rotors can be set to fast, medium, or slow. The vowels would only go through 1 permutation through the 6's switch. The switches made Purple a polyalphabetic cipher. With all these components, the resulting machine was large, delicate, and expensive, and thus never used on the battlefield. Since they were so expensive, few of these machines were made, and only the high-profile diplomats were able to use them. As you may have guessed by the description of the machine, the characters on the machine were from the Roman alphabet, despite being used by the Japanese military. Messages encrypted with Purple were first written in Romanji, the version of the Japanese language that uses Roman letters to phonetically spell Japanese words. This language is also used in modern Japanese computer. Now with an understanding of the machine, it's possible to examine the methods of encryption and decryption. Keys in this crypto system are the settings for the switchboard, switches speeds, and the switches starting positions. As a classical crypto system, Purple is still vulnerable to the key exchange problem. To encrypt, one only needs to set up according to the agreed upon settings and type the message, which will then be encrypted and automatically typed on the output typewriter. Then the message can be sent. For an example of the machine at work, consider the plaintext purple. With the pictured switchboard settings, purple becomes XTU-XWB. Since X was a consonant in the plaintext, it will go through 3 permutations which are determined by the starting positions of the 320 switches. Since T was a vowel in the plaintext, it will only go through 1 permutation, which depends on the position of the 6's switch. The U is the second letter typed, so the 6's switch will have moved 1 place from the starting position. As the message is typed, the 6's switch moves once per letter typed, and the 20 switch moves at speeds according to their separate settings. Since we already know how to perform a permutation, let's say 3 permutations on X gave B. B from the internal alphabet matches with H on the external alphabet, so the output keyboard would type H. Let's also say that a single permutation of T gives us A. This matches with the S on the external alphabet, so the first 2 letters of our message would be HS. To decrypt the message, the same machine is used, you just need to invert the encryption settings. Purple was revolutionary at the time, but it had flaws that mainly centered around the switchboard. The 620 split of the alphabet was a major contributor to the American cryptanalysts eventually breaking the crypto system. If the alphabet were not split into vowels and consonants, there would be 26 factorial possibilities for the internal and external alphabet. But the split reduces it to 20 factorial times 6 factorial, a reduction of 5 levels of magnitude. Since they already knew about the 620 split from working with red, cryptanalysts only had to find which 6 letters matched up with vowels, and after that they really only had to deal with 20 factorial possibilities. Though it seemed like a pointless practice that only decreases confusion between plaintext and ciphertext, the 620 split of the alphabet was a common practice at the time. By only replacing vowels with other vowels, the ciphertext remains pronounceable and can be transmitted over radio rather than by telegraph, which was more expensive. Still, the historical precedent does not make it a better move as far as security, and since they were no longer matching vowels with vowels the way they did with red, the 620 split no longer served a purpose. Furthermore, there's no real reason to keep the same internal and external alphabets for the input and output switchboards. By changing the output switchboard, they could have added another layer of complexity. The other contributing factors to American cryptanalysts breaking purple were primarily failures in Japan's implementation, rather than weaknesses in the crypto system itself. First, there were some messages that were encrypted with both red and purple. As mentioned, by the time purple was created, red was already compromised, so this was a major oversight. On top of that, Japanese encrypted some public European diplomatic texts, which Americans had access to. This information gave Americans everything they needed to understand the crypto system and build their own version of the machine, which they called the purple analog. The Japanese military then made a third mistake with the keys they used. The team working on breaking purple noticed a pattern with the keys that changed every 10 days, and resultantly they were able to decrypt any message encrypted with a combination of purple's weaknesses as a crypto system and Japan's implementation mistakes caused purple to be cracked and prevented it from being used to its fullest potential by the Japanese. Interestingly enough, Americans also made significant errors which prevented the U.S. military from making the most of the information learned from intercepted purple messages. On December 6, 1941, a message encrypted with purple was sent to the Japanese ambassador in Washington. The ambassador was supposed to present the message, which indicated that the Japanese would no longer negotiate with the United States, to officials 1 hour before the attack on Pearl Harbor, presumably so that it would be too late to send a warning, but the ambassador would be able to leave before the two countries were officially at war. Due to an issue translating from Japanese to English, the message was not actually presented to the Secretary of State until the news of the attack reached Washington. As you can imagine, this led to a rather awkward confrontation between the ambassador and the secretary. The 14-part message, as it was called, was intercepted and decrypted by U.S. personnel before the attack and enough time to send a warning. This time, it was the Americans who experienced delays with message transmission, and the warning arrived, sadly, too late. While there are some very basic takeaways relating to cryptosystem implementation, Purple has significantly more interesting lessons to teach. As you might expect, governments generally prefer to keep their secret codes and messages a secret, so there's no real incentive for governments to collaborate on furthering the study of cryptography like they might do for other fields. That is where a broken cryptosystem is much more useful. William Friedman, the leading cryptographer who worked for the US government to break Purple, actually started out with a degree in genetics. At first glance, there's little overlap between the two fields, but Friedman saw the connection between encoding of messages in cryptography and encoding of proteins through genes. He applied population models used by geneticists to predict the frequency of genes appearing in future generations to frequency analysis of letters as they appear in written language. The overlap works in the other direction as well, as Friedman's work led to improvements in the models that the geneticists use. To this day, research is done on Purple and improved versions of the cryptosystem. When it was created, Purple was a sophisticated cryptosystem that failed due to some flaws in its design, but more so due to poor implementation practices. Importantly, these limitations came from the 620 split of the alphabet and the use of the same settings on its two switchboards. Implementation started with encrypting messages that Americans could easily match to plain text, but the nail in the coffin was the use of a discernible pattern for the rotation of keys. Despite this, Purple has contributed much to the field of cryptography as it bridged the gap between cryptography and genetics, and inspires research in cryptography to this day.